I now recognize myself for an opening statement. The purpose of today's hearing is to review and acknowledge the destructive cost of the Endangered Species Act. Witnesses will testify to the costs the ESA imposes upon communities, states, ratepayers, businesses of all sizes, other species deserving protection, the environment, our children, and the infirm, among many others. Some here today will no doubt ask and possibly even suggest, given its incredible cost, why hasn't Congress repealed this law? The answer is that we all want species to be safe. We all want to avoid causing species to go extinct. And the ESA was a well-intentioned law attempting to do this. But after 50 years of the ESA and untold billions in expenditures paid many times by small communities and families and not the nation, and with questionable benefits, it's definitely time to come up with a better plan. Today we will bring the cost of this law to the attention of the nation. Soon we will introduce amendments to the Act that will improve its protection of species without destroying people and communities, and without costing more money than we can possibly find to address these issues. I'm absolutely certain we will hear from some folks across the aisle in an effort to hide or justify the horrific cost of this law, that today's hearing is simply another effort to get rid of the ESA. It is not, but it most certainly is an attempt to understand the ESA's cost. It is absolutely possible to question the cost of the ESA without questioning the need to protect species, even though some here will say otherwise. Cost does matter. Money isn't free, and understanding what we get for what we spend is always relevant. And there are certainly costs other than just money that will be addressed today. Here are some of the costs the ESA imposes that our witnesses will review this afternoon. 1, the cost incurred by agencies implementing the ESA. 2, the cost incurred by many species as water is taken from them and given to others because of the ESA. The cost of the nation of extraordinary amounts of delay and astounding amounts of money spent on the ESA in the context of NEPA compliance. 4, the cost of community destruction as activities such as logging and forest management are stopped by the ESA. The cost of the young and the old as they breathe air heavy with smoke from wildfires as they ravage our fuel-burdened forests, kept that way because of lawsuits and bureaucracy, creating a veritable Gordian knot of astounding complexity. The insane cost of ESA mitigation credits, a Jabberwocky construct that is driving the cost of electrical transmission, and thus the cost to rate and taxpayers across the West through the roof, and this is not to mention the insane impact this is having on land use and land values. 7, the cost to ratepayers along the Columbia River, far into the billions, as almost $1 billion per year of ratepayer money is being spent on fresh water when the focus should be on the sea. The cost of flood insurance, number 8, the cost of flood insurance, which because of lawsuits based on the ESA, will soon skyrocket in price and time taken to issue such insurance as FEMA becomes the new frontier of ESA compliance. I could easily go on, but I'll leave it to other members to raise the additional costs in their districts of the ESA. What we do know is that the ESA is failing in one of its core missions, recovering endangered and threatened species. As many here know, only 3% of listed species have been delisted, yet our constituents are being asked to pay billions of dollars each year in both direct and indirect costs to subsidize failed species conservation actions. Worst of all, the ESA's implementation desensitizes private landowners who are working hard to benefit species conservation, like my constituent, Sean Vibert, who grows wildflowers that create habitat for monarch butterflies. For example, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimates that recovering the Oregon spotted frog, the species affecting Mr. Vibert's operation, will cost $2.8 billion. That's the estimate. I will say again, $2.8 billion for one species. How useful is a recovery plan when the odds of it being implemented at that cost are so slim? The issue before us today is not whether these species should be protected. The issue is, are the management decisions made by these services the right ones, and are the costs associated with these decisions worth it, both for the species conservation and the costs imposed on our constituents? Take the case of the northern spotted owl in Oregon, where studies have shown the listing of that owl and its 9.6 million acres of associated critical habitat have cost the loss of 32,000 timber jobs. The costs we are examining today, as indicated previously, are not just to businesses, but also the cost to our constituents and other species. The status quo is not good enough, nor is it sustainable. I am certain we will hear today that there's nothing to see here, and that even to raise these issues is to attack species. I assure you, questioning what we're having to pay and who's having to pay it for such modest benefit in recovered species is exactly what my constituents want me to do, and I believe this hearing will go a long way in addressing this concern.